Happy Monday, everyone. It's once again the Mondays on Mondays. This is the Dad, CDH Dad, I guess, is my title.
And the CDH Warrior.
Once again, we just want to kind of start with the disclaimer that we are not medical professionals. We don't have a background in any of the medical sciences or anything like that. We're not psychologists, sociologists, whatever, not social workers. But in my life, my experience, I've had two children with special needs, two unique situations. Both were treatable and correctable, but there are concerns for the long lifetime of what the after effects may be. And because of that, we do this cast. I know my son will put in here that there is a website that we utilize.
Yes.
And there is a email address that you can access. So if you have any questions or comments or things that you want to discuss, you can very easily just send those to us. So thank you very much.
And with that, let's roll the title.
Welcome back again, and as I said, I'm the CDH Dad. Each week we try and put together a Mondays on Mondays topic. Part of that is the fact of our last name happens to be Monday. So it makes a nice title for our gathering and discussion. What we do is we kind of pick from what we see in a lot of comments that we get from various people, what we see in social media, what we discuss in various aspects. As I've kind of discussed in some of our previous, and I'll catch anyone up who hasn't been involved in any of the previous broadcasts, is I have two children. My son, who was CDH, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which basically means that his diaphragm was not fully formed at birth. Organs were in his chest. This required a patch to correct that, and then within a couple of weeks that patch had to be redone because of issues with the corrective surgery that was done. We were fortunate to have a doctor who specialized in CDH after the third hospital that he was in, and the treatment went very well. Just to kind of give you some more background, because part of what I want to talk about today is what is needed for the long term as a parent and as a patient for the long-term care, medical treatment, what types of things would you expect. And these are going to vary because each child is an individual, each situation is different. There are going to be different aspects of that. But as I said, my son was a CDH. And would you like to comment in terms of something in terms of your background, and we'll kind of go over.
Well, I was going to state one thing about where this jumped off was I got a question on one of my Q&As this past week that I do for the nonprofit of what is needed for the long-term care, and that's what we jumped off of. But it's one.
Well, that's what we jumped off of, but it's also a matter of there was an incident recently of a CDH, similar age to you, who had some issues with the doctor, felt like something was wrong. We don't know the details, but that's part of what we'll discuss in this, is that part of what I've discussed in the previous sessions is what we call, if you hear hoofbeats, look for zebras. And this is part of what you have to deal with in your medical team when you have something that is unique and special, because there are not many doctors who are familiar with congenital diaphragmatic hernia. The repair to the diaphragm is something that's done in the early phases, and usually within a few years that's settled. It may relapse, but the relapse may not typically cause a long-term health issue, but it does cause discomfort and does need to be repaired. But there are sideline issues in terms of the cardio system, the pulmonary system, and gastrointestinal, which can cause very life-threatening conditions. The patch, if it does rupture and open up again, you have another hernia, then it can impact the GI tract, which can get in there and twist and become necrotic, which is an immediate health issue. It can also have organs that go into the chest, which interfere with the respiratory system in those eyes.
With lung function.
You can also have some issues that may have not been seen in the early phases in terms of the cardio system. That can be a long-term effect. So these are the top things that we want to kind of discuss in today's topic. But it's also, as I said, my daughter was aplastic anemia, which basically her bone marrow system shut down. And we were fortunate that we were able to find a umbilical cord donor for that, and the stem cells were able to engraft. And the long-term effects have not been significant. We haven't seen anything major there. But these are things that need to be checked on a regular basis as people get older and conditions change. So that's part of what we wanted to bring out in this is what to do. Now, in my son's case with the CDH, there were really a couple of years that were fairly significant in terms of medical treatment and therapy going on into the early elementary years. But even up until elementary years, we had regular checkups with the pediatrician, and then also touching base with the CDH doctor just to determine what might be wrong, just to make sure there were no issues, concerns, anything that was a yellow flag that might need to be investigated. Those were the type of things we went through. Now, as parents, part of what we did is we went a little above and beyond, and we went into some other things. We went to a pulmonologist when you were elementary school age, just to investigate and see were there any respiratory problems or issues there. At that age, that's when you have a concern, because the body is changing, a lot of development's going on, things can shuffle around, things change. And he was able to give a pretty good clean bill in terms of that. Now, as we got closer to teenage years, we were fortunate that my wife's uncle happens to be a pediatric cardiologist and specialist, so we were able to get an appointment with him, and basically what we call a 100,000 mile checkup. Basically what you would consider with your car is there's a point in life you're getting into the first of puberty, the body's changing, you've grown, a lot of things move around, a lot of hormones and physiological changes go into place. So that's a time when you may want to get involved with a pediatric cardiology specialist just to check the systems, to make sure that the heart and the lungs are functioning properly. We had not seen any issues in terms of GI issues, and I credit part of that to the doctor who did the initial surgeries. He did the CDH repair, but then with the issues that were involved in the CDH repairs and the treatments there, the intestines were damaged, and it was almost 8-hour surgery where he had to go in and resect portions of the intestines, put those back together, and you lost about a third of your intestines. Now there were some GI issues, nothing major, but just little concerns and things that we learned over time. We learned that you were lactose intolerant, which could have been just a natural function, but could have also been part of this issue. So these are the top things that you need to kind of keep abreast of and pay attention to your body and what it tells you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, what you had.
Well, that's what I've known several that had food allergies. But some of us, as we got older, started to question how much of it was due to CDH and how much of it was due to genetics.
All right.
And does one exacerbate the other?
It does. And that's where, we have the question of, how often do you need to take your doctor or your child to the doctor? And a lot of this goes to parents because, a lot of that is going to have to be a rule of thumb based on how your child's condition is. If your child had respiratory issues that are longer term issues, then at least once a year or twice a year, you need to check with the pulmonologist. If there were concerns because there may have been some impact or damage to the heart, you need to make sure you get with a cardiologist. You also, no matter what the condition is, whenever this surgery is done, it's moving around the intestines, the bowel, the stomach, all of those parts. And that's a lot of plumbing to move around, a lot of hose, and it could be very simple for something to get kinked and cause a blockage. So those are things you need to kind of keep track of. And yes,
two things that can happen. It can either be blocked, or it can have the blood flow. It doesn't necessarily have to have the organ blocked, but you can accidentally block an artery, twist a vein, and then that whole section becomes necrotic.
Right, and then
And then
it's
you've
going to
got
have to be
even bigger
removed and
issues.
all that. So, these are longer term issues that will have to be addressed. So, in the parent stage, you're going to have to keep track of input and output. Is there regular stooling? How does that appear? Do there seem to be problems? Is there blood? Those type of things. And those are not necessarily things that a child is going to pay attention to. So you've got to figure out how you're going to address those types of issues and concerns. As your child gets older, as I said, usually around the tween years into puberty, there are a lot of physiological changes going on, a lot of physical changes going on. That's a time when you'll need to have some checkups and those type of things. As your child reaches adulthood, you're also going to have to look at some other issues in terms of any of the reproductive issues and things like that, because there can be impacts there. It could be, from a male, that it could be, a problem with the testicles or something like that that's going to impact longer term issues because things were not organized. I know in your case it was an undescended testicle. The doctor did repair that. We don't know long term. We haven't.
Well, I wasn't going to go that direction.
Yeah.
But it's one I know this question gets brought up a lot, and it's one I'll touch on this in a later video on the We Survived This Now What podcast, but somebody actually asked on one of my Q&As, what happens with regards to pregnancy, with regards to reproduction as an adult with CDH? Because it's one I've known, I know of at least two that had reherniation issues from pregnancy.
The pregnancy could cause the reherniation. The
And
other
that's
is
something you need to make sure your doctor is made aware of.
right. In that, the other is you need to work with your OBGYN and discuss, was there a genetic issue with CDH? And if so, you have to weigh the risk and the concerns there of what you want to do for the long term. And those are personal decisions you need to make, but you also need to be able to talk comfortably with your medical professional, with your doctor, about those types of issues. Same thing with my daughter with aplastic anemia, is that we know that there may be long-term issues. We wanted to check because in that case you've got a blood system that is foreign to the body, and you end up with issues there, graft versus host disease, which basically your body attacks part of your blood system attacks part of your body and goes through those things. But then you also have to be comfortable being able to talk with your doctor about those types of issues and what can be expected in the long term. In that case, with a child, if you're going through a bone marrow transplant, you're talking about very heavy chemotherapy and total body irradiation. So can that cause issues and concerns with the female organs, the female reproductive system? So you as a parent, as your child is in those teen years, you need to ask some questions there and be prepared on that. But you also need to talk with your child and have them prepared as they go into adulthood to, okay, you need to be comfortable talking with your doctor about your past history and how it may impact some things, and just make sure that there's awareness on those items. The other is, and I haven't necessarily seen any details in terms of that, but when you're dealing with a female with CDH, we talk about the GI tract being impacted, but I'm sure the female organs can also, and the female reproductive system can be impacted. So those are things that you need to be comfortable with, talking with a doctor and those type of things. And we would appreciate any feedback if we have any CDH survivors that would be willing to provide their assessment of these are the top problems you had in your 20s, 30s, as you were getting into those reproductive years, if there were issues that you think should be addressed and passed along to others in the community.
Well, and I'll see if I can talk with Angela Anderson and Keisha Mullins. Both are adults with CDH and have kids. So that would give us some answers.
Some answers on that.
I'll kind of reach out to them.
Reach out on that. But that's part of what we're trying to do on this, is to get a community where we can talk about these things and discuss these, because particularly with CDH and especially in aplastic anemia, it's few and far between to find people who have been through similar episodes. So we need some way to be able to openly discuss what's going on.
Odds on this: 1 in 4,000 with a 50% survival rate for CDH, and with Marin,
about 1 in a quarter million. It's extremely rare for aplastic anemia. So these are the top things that we wanted to be able to open up and address about. So I think we're, pretty much at the end of the discussion of what we were looking at today. As we said, this is not a medical professional. We're not trying to do that end. What we're trying to do is just raise awareness for CDH, also aplastic anemia, trying to let parents who are dealing with children with these types of special needs and other special needs, to let you know that you're not alone. Others have been through this struggle. I do appreciate with the CDH site to be able to let people know that, you can be concerned about this, but the CDH can generally be dealt with in the first couple of years, and you can step forward from that. Then you've got to look at the longer term issues and where that's going to be. And the difficulty is, in the mid-90s, up until the mid-90s, the survival rate was about 30 to 50% for a CDH child. Now it's closer to 70 to 80%. And there are more survivors, but it's difficult to go back to those that are in the 20 and 30 year range, even 40 year old range, and be able to get feedback from their experiences and what they've gone through. So that's, again, part of this. If you happen to be an older survivor, please feel free to contact us and let us know what input you may have in terms of issues that others may want to know along the way, because we want to be able to put markers along the trail so that people will have some understanding of this is the way it's going to go. There are going to be a lot of twists and turns, but hopefully in the long run you're getting towards a successful, healthy life.
And I'll try and shake some trees because I know of at least 4 different people
that are longer term survivors.
You know one of them for a fact.
Well, I
Mary
do.
Bennett.
I do, but it's
Yeah.
when hers was not detected until much later in life, and that does occur sometimes. So once again, this is for Mondays on Mondays. For the CDH Dad, we appreciate your watching. Would appreciate any input that you have, and please pass this along to others that you think might be interested in this type of information.
Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.